All right, how's it going, everyone? We are here with Mr. Jim. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How's everybody doing? Good to see you.
All right, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. So, how long have you been practicing for?
Intentionally about a year and a half, but unintentionally about my whole life. Um,
Right, good answer. Okay, yeah.
Understanding what magic was after digging through the fireballs and the wizards and the theatrical movie magic. I never
Hmm.
looked into it. I just looked over it. But through the
Hmm.
years of looking into different religions, I was like, wait a second, let me give this a little bit more of a try. And so I've probably read, I'll start going through the books that I've read. I have a list. But just an understanding that I was like, there seems to be almost like a 95% correlation with reality in a lot of the modern chaos magic books, where in all the religions they talk in hyperbole and big stories, and maybe there is hidden messages in there, but there isn't a clarity of purpose or ritual or self empowerment. It's always displaced into a god or a theory or this and that. And it's like, well, I'm in the game to empower myself, figure out what this body, this meat machine can do.
Sure.
And, if it happens to be some ritual or some practice that enhances that, then I'm all game for it. I grew up in a material world wanting to be an engineer of sorts, like aerospace engineer, really in the material world. Like I didn't, even when it came to music, I only listened to studio recordings. I didn't like live music. I was so stuck in what I call the clock, like the regular clock
Uh-huh. I
society.
get that.
And it's
Hmm.
not like we live in a society, man, but there is a clock that you kind of chime to. You take in all the entertainment that is brought forward to you, and you just digest it without really thinking about it. But as soon as you start to step back, you can realize how much is conditioned for you to believe, even though it may be more obvious if you just look at it. And that's where chaos magic came in. It was like, oh, this is so obvious. This is so weirdly obvious. I've been doing this most of my life in ways that I couldn't even explain. And it's become so useful, especially in the last, 6 months to a year, with really hammering down on, just opening up to it, I guess, like fully. And it's been great. I use a general form, what I would just call like source magic, which is just I take what I find valuable in each form, whether it's Aleister Crowley's Thelmic magic and reading what I can get out of there, or ancient Hindu stuff. Like, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It's just about making it useful for yourself and incorporating it into a practice. That's what I find. Like, that's how magic opened itself up to me. I was doing it by coincidence and by happenstance, but then suddenly I was like, oh, I can control my own life and start to use this for my own benefit instead of just chance. And not sure where you want to go from there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting how you mentioned there was like little hints dropped along the way, and like film and literature. Yeah, I've found the same thing. It's there if you know where to look for it.
Yeah.
Those who have eyes to see type thing. And I love how you mentioned the sort of chaos component of it, of being eclectic and bringing together what works for you, because
Yeah.
ultimately at the end of the day, magic is an art, and well, art is magic. It's, you could debate that,
Yeah.
one is the other, but essentially they might be one and the same thing at the end of the day, or they might be, different facets of the same stone. So okay, what are some of your favorite types of magic to practice, or what are some of the things that you do that you feel are the most magical in your life?
So personally, I do it through the drum, which I brought with me.
Excellent. Is that a djembe?
Yeah, this is a djembe that I
Excellent.
have,
Cool, cool.
nice big 14-inch that I have tuned to 300 I believe it's one of the variations of 365, one of the Solfeggio frequencies, and it's lovely. It's like really drones in, but weirdly, I started my magic practice through meditation mostly, and cognitively doing it, it's actually started from just practice, sitting on a drum pad for over an hour, and the repetition sent me into a shamanic trance.
I believe it.
And
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
played
oh,
didgeridoo.
yeah. So I was like, whoa, what's going on here? So that kind of like uncovered it. And then being a fan of Tool, Alex Gray, I
I
mean,
was going to mention that Alex Gregg
very,
has hit that art. He looks like a djembe.
yeah,
Like the shape of the head behind you looks like a djembe. It's perfect.
exactly.
Please
And
continue. Go ahead.
it was so obvious to me. Like I use Danny Carey's sticks. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", 180 pounds. I got big
Okay.
hands. So I've used his sticks because they're the biggest, they last long, and they have a nice like couple features that really make them useful. But his sigils on the stick, like I've used him for 3 years and I never looked down at him and was like, oh, wait a second. So then I go to his website and I look at, he's got like all the Aleister Crowley originals, and he's got a ton of old Thelmic. And then his like father was a mason that practiced with like a 2,000-year-old sword. So this like, it just started
Wow.
opening the onion. Like, and it's all public right on his website. You can just read it. And then there's a bunch of, there's some religious people writing up being like, hey, I didn't condone being in a ritual when I went to that Tool concert, and they're like upset about it. Hey, buddy, it
Life
happened.
is a ritual. What are you gonna do? Everything you do is an act of magic, you know?
So it's like the development, and I realized that I'm like an adrenaline junkie. I could
Mhm.
my YouTube's filled with me doing old videos that I've been recently posting of me doing wheelies and crazy high speed stuff. But that was when I realized, like, that's how I learned a remote view, was the super high focus of riding at high speeds at high stakes, and the harmonizing between the motorcycle exhausts would create an
I love
ability
it.
to see yourself in a third person view. But like
Mhm.
I didn't know what I was doing at the time. It was only through reading 5 chaos magic books that goes, oh, that's what we're doing. Because I have another friend that is sensitive, and he happens to be a part Blackfoot Indian, which if you go long down the history, like people believe they might be descendants from Atlantis and be more inclined to
Wow.
being in touch with this stuff. But it was funny because me and him would discuss it, because we would ride within 6 inches of each other at 150 miles an hour through turns, through traffic. It would freak people out that would ride with us that were also, taking that level of risk and associated with it. But we were at another level, and we would discuss, be like, yeah, it's like, I know where you're there. It's like, I can see you. Like, I can see the bike. I can feel you like right there. I know when to turn. I know when to change lanes. We changed lanes in sequence without blinkers or signals, just at like 100 miles an hour. The
That's
only word we
incredible.
never used, guess what it was? It was magic. It was the only term that we did not use through all our discussions of what the hell we were doing. And in hindsight, years later, now discussing it, it became so clear and obvious. And then once him and I started discussing, he started having these incredible journey, shamanic style journeys,
Mhm,
unprompted, where he
mhm,
met Gaia, went to the spirit garden. All like, if I
mhm.
read Sarah Ingram's work, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She
I don't
writes
I don't think so.
Sarah or Sandra Ingram. Awakening the Spirit World is one of her. It's like intro to shamanism books, which I find a
Okay.
lot very useful. It's I find the shamanism useful because it's very useful for empowering yourself. So like charging up essentially is like going into
Mhm,
nature, experiencing natural forest, all like places where you think of like humans gatherings, shorelines, riverbeds, like waterfalls, those types of places you can use to kind of enhance your like natural energy
mhm,
and raise your consciousness a little bit more. And it also like strips you away from what I was saying earlier, that conditioning, that like that clock conditioning. Like we're in this world. Everyone has to follow this clock. It kind of lets you strip away from that and makes you aware that like, no, we're not in the clock, we're on Earth. We're not even on Earth, we are Earth, we're in Earth. As there's like a misconnection that like a lot of humans have, where they think we're like some travelers that ended up here. Oh, we're humans on Earth, we can do whatever. No, it's like we're part of the system. Like, though you can't see the air you breathe, it's still there. It's like everything is around us all the time, just leaching from one area to the other. And that's
mhm.
also like helped me realize like where the power comes from, like where magic, that energy focus can come from, is like it seems to be, because we're in this net. It's like seemingly like almost like a solid, but it seems like we're all separated, but it's all one kind of thing. Like it's more like a soup than a pizza. Like that's what we're in. We think we're the pepperoni on top of the pizza, but we're more like
That's
salt
awesome.
in the soup
Mhm,
mix. And so it's like once you realize you're that salt, and you realize like, but salt does a lot. Salt can do a lot to the soup. Too much salt, that fucks it up. Too little, and it tastes terrible. But we are the salt, and that's that kind of energy. That's where I believe the energy comes from, is being part of that bigger thing. And once you realize that we're in it, that's where it comes from. It makes it more obvious and more accepting of where, like, how any of this is possible, any kind of magic, any kind of ritual, or like where music comes from. It's where does it come from? It comes from everywhere. It comes to us. It's I can only, it's so many words, but I think I've gotten my point across is there's like through the, you can kind of, it's always there, and through like the focus of the motorcycles or the focus of the meditation, it kind of lets you catch the wave, like tune into that frequency, if only for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 seconds. But for that moment, you kind of get a little bit of intuition, you get a little bit more creative, you get a little bit more in touch with reality. Things start to unveil themselves. Like I was saying, like onion layers start to open. And sometimes like through another one of my practices, like I started with the drumming meditation, just hand work, repetitive, super repetitive. And then I started using like Gnostic meditation and chaos meditation, where it's you don't move, you try to stay completely still, eyes covered, no sounds, and just focus on nothing as long as you can. And through that process, like I went from 5 minutes up to about an hour and a half. But with what that also came was like the ability to draw, because I asked, through the Gnostic meditation, I was like, I need some proof. So I haven't drawn in, since I was a kid. And the proof I got was I started being able to draw these like crazy psychedelic images, which I brought with me. But you could see like this one was probably like a month into working on them. I'm sorry, the camera.
There you go. That's awesome.
And this was actually the first one, which I called Roth, which is pretty strange. But this was like the first thing I drew in 15 years. And something in meditation was like, buy drawing supplies, buy that stuff. Now, those have progressed further into things like this, which
beautiful.
But like when people want proof, as like, this is like, that's my, I don't know, it's a concrete example that there is something to the magic. It's like, if you focus that will, the universe repays you with kind of gifts. And by focusing and becoming, like when I was saying, like the meditation with the drumming, the meditation with auto drawing, with that, all those are like that connection that I was talking about, where you get like the 5 seconds, you get 10 seconds, you get 10 minutes, you get an hour. By investing into your own creativity and expressing that, the creative magic, it seems to empower all the other forms. So it's like by being able to create imagery or physical things, that also seems to, in my magic practice, enhance the ability to create musical things, even though they seemingly are completely separate. And that's when I'm talking about that tuning in, is it seems to always come from the same place, even though like psychedelic drawings and music, drumming, seem very abstractly different.
Depends who you ask.
Yeah, that depends. I guess it does depend how you ask. I guess in more of a standard, I don't know, if you listen to a lot of Taylor Swift and you like Mickey Mouse a lot, you might be more inclined to think they're separated. But that's, I digress. But it's creating the magic. To me, is creating the ability of that connection. So when I sort through any kind of magic-esque books, which I count shamanism, even like the way people play music, like music theory to me is magic. Language is magic. Like different languages is, because it all comes from that like same flick of inspiration. Like when you go, oh, I got to go write this song, I got to go play my instrument, I got to go draw this, I got to go work on this, paint this.
I get it. Yeah.
Everything comes from that.
I love it. Yeah.
But we separate them. It's like to me, music is magic. It's not music has magical aspects. It's music was one of like our first forms of spirituality and first forms of religion. So, but there is like a magical aspect to it. Like I always, when people say like, oh, what do you mean by that? I go, if you never heard music in your life and a guy walked in and started making sounds with his mouth that made you evoke emotions immediately, and then on a sub noticeable level, it changes the frequency of the way your brain functions and the beating of your heart, you'd go, what is this crazy thing? That must be magic. No, that is what music is. Like that is what music is. It has a physical effect on you through sound waves that is emitted by another human. That, and where that inspiration comes from is where, like, that's where science ends. Like no one really knows. Like, where did that riff come from in my dream that I woke up and stood on my guitar and played? Where does that come from? I mean, you know, there is a reason to believe it's like kind of a conglomeration of all your experiences, but certain things just don't make sense, because why, when you sit down at your instrument, you can't just think this riff, this note, this progression? Why can't you just, if it's in you, just like it's in you all the time, why isn't it just coming out then when you sit and work on it and focus on it? Why does it come out when you're walking through the grocery store in the middle of the day and it pops in your head when you're thinking about what carrots to buy? And, you know, that could be the song. That's how a lot, like, of famous musicians talk about it. It's like you get to slip into that connection. And what I think practicing magic is training that connection, training that ability to do that. And the length of where that can take you in your life path also, I feel like, has a huge weight in how that is expressed. Like the more you invest into that magical connection, and the more you invest onto like what the fuck you actually want to do in your life, the more it repays you. So, but you have to be like honest with yourself. Like you kind of have to strip away the nonsense, like the true nonsense. It's like, if you want to be a drummer, you can't go to the bar 4 nights so we can hang out with your buddies. You can't, like, if you want to truly be an artist, a musician, a creator, like you're doing with your, you know, these interviews, is you have to invest truly to it. You know, the classic saying, sell your soul. It's like, no, you have to sell the old self, like the self that accepted whatever job you work at, whatever accepted, like what small hump you decided, this is good enough, I feel comfortable. You have to kill that self and imagine yourself reaching a higher point and then working backwards and saying, what do I have to do with it? That's how I use magic. It's like, when I say I want to make music, okay, where does that start? Well, it started in a living room with an e-kit and a speaker, and now I'm in a recording studio with a full band. But I wanted to do that. So every day, what can I do every day to work towards those goals? Like, this is like a practical interpretation of how I see like the focus of will in magic that's discussed in Gnosticism, Thelma. Like I believe the who is it? Sorry, the Illuminati. They also talk about the focus of will, but it's like a practical form that everyone can use of magic. Beside, like, I don't find the rituals to be necessary, to be honest, as a practitioner. I believe it's the rituals, the sacrifice, the anything you want, it, what it's doing is tricking the monkey from the magic. Like, we're like a monkey body that's, it wants to react to everything that comes around us, like whether it's pleasure, pain, fear. And then we have this magical spiritual energy that is intertwined with it. And it's by like learning to separate the monkey from it and knowing that, becoming aware of that separation, is where I think like the key to most magical ability can derive from. And it's like, and then, but you have to find a focal point of will, essentially. And like this, but like the rituals and stuff is to strip away the concreteness of what you think reality is. And it focuses you, because if you just say, oh, I want to do this spell, and you just say it, you walk into the yard, you say this spell, or this is my will, this is what I want to get done, there doesn't seem like there's anything to it. Like I just went outside and set it in my backyard. With the ritual aspect, with the burning of incense, the magical symbolism, you're sitting there and you're drawing the symbol. You're focusing the mind onto the will. You're burning the incense, you're creating smell, you're creating this environment that desensitizes you from the normal world and focuses that will into the result. I don't necessarily think that the material aspects of magic are necessary, because I don't believe the force and the energy that's used in it comes from the material world. I believe it's more of like a channeling of, you know, in science, I guess like a 4D or a 5D space, like where consciousness exists, where thoughts come from. Like there's me and you, body, meat body. But when I think, and I'm, you know, when there's that voice in your head, you're talking to yourself, you're thinking through an idea, where does that exist in space? Like that's where that exists is where I think magical power comes from. But we're more of like a monkey receiver that can strengthen that muscle, that receiving point. It can continue, like you can expand the satellite dish through meditation, through ritual, through musical practice, though that like strengthens that connection to where our consciousness lives, I should say. And like the focus of your will as like a magician should be, you have obviously like everyone has physical limitations with their body, but your focus of your will should be see what your body is capable of doing, creating or moving physically, anything. It's like if you're not testing your body and seeing what you're capable of, that's what I feel is like that's where the power comes from, is constantly pushing your own limitations. It allows your body to really know itself, your consciousness to really know like what is it, the top of my, like it seems silly, but in a lot of like in a lot of the chaos magic, it talks about becoming aware of your entire body. And through like playing guitar, when you see a great guitarist move his fingers, that doesn't look real, it looks mechanical. It's because his soul connects through his fingers. The more you practice it, literally in a medical standpoint, it actually hardens. The more you practice your instrument, practice an action, whether it's yoga, guitar, drums, the like essentially the wiring to those sensories keeps reinforcing itself over and over again and strengthening, which improves the responsiveness. So like through meditation of becoming aware of like relaxing the whole body, like why they go through all those things is becoming more aware. The more aware you are, the more capable you are of like manipulating the body essentially. I'm not sure where I'm going with that point. Sorry.
So you've mentioned a couple of things here.
Sorry if I ran
Some that I agree with, a lot that I agree with, and some that I used to agree with, but I don't necessarily agree with now. I don't disagree with them. I just have changed my opinion. One of the things that you mentioned was focus, and I think focus is a very magical thing. I think focus is like a laser that whatever you focus it at, whatever you point it at, is like you burn a hole into your reality, like into the one that you're pointing it at.
That's a great way
and
to put it.
that's how I think about it. And another thing that you mentioned was how like life will give you gifts if you pursue adversity. You said it in a different way, but more or less like if you test yourself, life will give you gifts. That's something else I agree with as well. One of the things that I can share on a personal level is that one of the ways that I figured out what I was supposed to be doing, like more or less, or I was getting closer to what I was supposed to be doing, is I would do things that would give me the same amount of adversity as before. Like I would receive X amount of adversity from something, but get 3 times the yield or 3 times the fruit from it. It was like life was like pointing me like in the direction that I was supposed to be going in. And another thing that you mentioned was material components. I totally agree that materials are not necessary. For the first decade that I practiced, I didn't use any material components except for like a mortar and pestle and like incense to like set the mood. And then as I figured out, like as I practiced longer and longer, like different people use different things. And like at this point in my practice, I really only use like, besides candles and like a mirror to like gaze and reflect into, I really only use a dagger or like a thame, some people say, to
Well, like I have a
help
drum kit,
go ahead.
Well, I have a whole drum kit. Like, I mean, like if I like, it's not that I don't use tools.
Mhm.
It's just that I don't find like burning, like the old goat sacrifice or burning this incense.
Yeah, I
Specific
get that.
thing. These like
I will say though, there's different levels of consciousness that can be accessed, and the musical trance-like component of consciousness is only one of them.
oh for sure.
And as what I was saying is that like the dagger represents one mode of consciousness, and then like a wand that one might use represents another mode of consciousness. So it's almost like having different channels
Like folders,
on a remote control.
or like
Go
folders
ahead.
on your desktop. Like the dagger
Yeah.
opens this door, and the ring
Yeah.
opens this door.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
Yeah.
not that I just don't find the necessity in
Mm.
the experience. Like, don't focus on the materials you're using. Like, focus on a thing. Like, if you have a ring that you find variable, use that as, like you said, like almost like your folder, your doorway for that level of consciousness. But don't get caught up on like, do I need to go find the specific incense to
Yeah,
get
no,
the result?
definitely.
I feel like
Yeah,
that is
definitely.
very like a very wrong, if there's any wrong paths to magic, that's one of going, oh, I need to find this rare incense to burn so I can do this practice ritual. And it's like, no. The somatics, the materials aren't necessarily, it's the, like you said, the focus of the will, getting that laser honed in.
Mhm.
If you need the whole experience to focus that laser,
Mhm.
go for it. But it's not, you can't go into it thinking you need it and thinking, oh, well, maybe I was missing this component and that's why this didn't work, because it leaves you outs too. Like, it leaves you
Yeah.
excuses to your practice.
I agree. When I first started, those material components actually distracted me. I had to learn how to get to these states of consciousness through hypnosis, NLP, psychedelic drugs, art. I had to learn how to get to these places first without the tools, probably without even the drugs, honestly, just the various forms of meditation. But getting there first like was definitely a key. And then I found that like the material components like the candles and the incense and whatever sacred words or whatever sigils that I've drawn that represent things over time, like these things are only enhanced by the experiences that I've already had without them.
Yep, that's I can agree with that. It's
Excellent.
it's fun. What I find also is fun in like searching through like any magic text or whatever is finding the garbage is also like, it's kind
Yeah,
of fun. It's
separating the wheat from the
literally,
chaff. Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
because, you know, the way you have to look at any magic book, like any historical text, is any schizophrenic or just insane or narcissistic person could have picked up and written something down. So like there may be truth in that, but you have to realize that they're just humans that wrote it at the very, like, and Aleister Crowley is a
Sure.
perfect example of that. It's like he probably did get some results in his practice, but was all the nonsense and like his depravity necessary? Probably not, but maybe. We'll never know, and no one will know, and that's the beauty of it. But to think you have to go to those levels is a fallacy, I believe. And
Yeah,
it's
I
just,
think it's magic is almost a form of psychosis in itself. It's the way the way that people practice it. It's different for everybody. Some would say that it's not necessary to get into ecstatic trance. Um, some would say that it's not necessarily to say a single word out loud. Some people can, maybe there's masters out there that can just think a thought and then it just happens. But there is a very creative aspect to ceremony and ritual as well that I found very similar to playing a live performance. The amount of you create this thought form, you create this egregore of the performance as you practice with your bandmates over the months. And like as you get that song locked in, finally, you've played it several times and nobody's messed up. Like that song gets locked in as a thought form that just hovers within the band's like Akashic record, like
yep.
just waiting to be released and you know explored. And that's like I totally get that. And like that whole preparation that goes into it and the passion that is experienced during and the release that's experienced during, like that's basically what happens, that catharsis that happens to a very large degree during ceremony and ritual. And if you another way that the names become important to certain practitioners is because we have over time drawn a map of our soul above and below. And various philosophers before us, like Dante and Jung, have expressed the need to integrate the shadow into our being. So we threw a net above and we dug some channels below, and we called this place this and that place that. And we use these names and these various states of trance and symbols to contact those buttons on the various parts of our soul
Yep.
at different times. And then we come back and record the experiences of that to try to see what results are there, to try to find some sort of meta truth about the soul, I guess. But I very much see live performance in any musical project I've ever been a part of very much like ceremony. It's dramatic psychology.
Yeah,
It's,
we call it a ritual. Like we just call, like, instead of calling it a band, like instead of calling myself like a, like, we joke, it's half joke, half truth, but we're not musicians anymore. We're mages or magicians. Like,
I mean, yeah,
because it's, you can, I don't know, it's like you can play music like the clock. Like, and a lot of people, like you said, like you can encapsulate the song, but how we actually do in our recordings, it's all off the top, one take. That's how we generally play, because I seem to be channeling like the magical intent of the other members and their own abilities, is like they focus through me, and then we let, that, like, basically, like I was saying, that muscle to connect to the thing is trying to allow that to flow early and continuously. And what I call it is, like, how we build our songs is called the skeleton. Like, what is the skeleton of, like, what riff is in that section? Whereas if it was gone, it would sound completely different. Like, what piece is the most focal piece? And that's the only piece that we actually will keep for the songs. The rest, I prefer to keep it to let the energy, like that spirit, that, you know, ether flow through. So it allows you to capture the energy of the room. Because that's where in my music practice, like, it's becoming more ritual and more magic oriented, is because we don't encapsulate the songs into hard starts and hard ends, which sounds sloppy and messy, whatever. But the way we do it, like the way it's progressed, which you can hear in the recordings, which I'll share the the information to find that, is you can see from 6 months ago when we did our live jam, there's like a 15-part song. And then the stuff we released 2 months ago, that's, 4-part, 40-minute, basically it was a live jam of us on psychedelics, in meditation, playing throughout the day, and then cut together into like clean, without all the extra just goofing around. But because since we've turned into ritual, you can actually see the progression. You can hear the progression of how, and you could say, yeah, it's like progress, but you have to understand is we don't write the songs. We just play. We literally go, okay, Trevor, start a riff. And then we go for 12 minutes. And that's how we do it. And that's how we like to play music. And that's how I intend on playing music live. Though it won't be recreating the perfect experience for the fan, what I intend to do is create a unique experience for every fan. So they're literally contributing to what they hear. Their energy in the room is being used to make the thing. That's how I want to play music. That's why I say, like, my music is a magical practice for me, is because there's an intent for me to, every time we play, to capture the energy of the room and use that energy to build the song to sound maybe a little different. Maybe it's a little bit longer. Maybe it's a little faster. Maybe it's a little bit slower. But leaving the song to be able to be manipulated by the energy of the room. That's the goal. And it does make things more difficult when it's like, oh, we need, like, how do we work on that song? It's like, well, play that riff and we're going to play it again. And what we look for is, we record everything we jam. We look for the similarities, and each time we played that skeleton, and then use that to build on the skeleton, but still leaving everything open-ended. And I call it like skeleton, music magic, or that's just the framing, because I haven't heard anyone else talk about it in that specific way. But it's like that channeling. I feel like, in my personal thing, is like, yes, you can channel and write a song that's written out perfectly, but it, like I said, it doesn't allow that song to be influenced in real time. So it's like, I want my music to be influenced by the day I had that day. Like, if I'm pissed off, I want to play pissed off that night, but not in just like I'm hitting my things harder, but I'm literally playing with a different energy, essentially. So every time I play to someone, they are getting a reflection of themselves in the music that they're hearing, which that, at least that's my will. That's how I intend on doing things. And that's where I want to carry the music forward. and let that mirror and that energy like reflection to empower them to go and do something similar, go be creative themselves, to see something that feels like magic, so they want to go feel that again. And I think that's what Tool has done with their music and a couple other bands. Tool with maybe more intent with how we discussed Danny Carey's like magic practice and his drumming. But it's like that's my will. I guess that's my goal of my magic practice, is to eventually be playing to enough people where I can really make a difference through just, a 45-minute performance in their lives. Like, but it takes so much. It really does. Like, it's me and my guitarist have jammed for almost 9 years now, and now we're like finally in the recording studio recording things and really hammering it down and have other members. But it's like, to do it right and to get to that, like, because we've just free jammed for 9 years, like, that sounds like crazy, like, hey, we're not going to write a song for 9 years, we're just going to show up, plug our instruments in and play. Like, doesn't that sounds kind of like the most counterintuitive way to write music, but I think it's the most honest way. It's truly like us at that point. Like, our own musical ability has grown together. Like, when you play with someone for that long, like I literally feel I can't play as well without my guitarist. Like, if my guitarist isn't there and I sit down at my kit, I'm playing it maybe like 70% now. But if he's there, I'm over 100 in the weirdest way. But that's my experience in like magic. My personal magic practice is completely through like ritual music, making my own music a ritual, not necessarily like taking an old ritual and converting it to music, but literally like making the music my ritual. And the constant practice, whether it's on my djembe or my full kit, with the band, with the drum circles, however I have to do it. But or auto drums, like anytime I can practice those, it enhances the ability to capture that energy. And that's my like ultimate goal as a musician, magician, mage, whatever you want, magic practitioner, shaman. You can put every label on it just because they're there, but it's like, there's always more to it. It's like, to me, I don't know if you felt this, but it's like, I practice shamanism, but I don't like going like, hi, I'm a shaman, because you don't know what someone thinks when they say shaman. Like, you really have no idea what that means in their head. They could think of like, a stinky hippie. They could think of a guy in black robes. They could think of like an ancient tribal person, with a ton of cool facial piercings and tattoos. Like, you don't know what it is. So that's where I tend to like, I don't really have a name for it. It's like, I practice magic, but in more, like I said, more of like, I call it source magic, because it's just easier. Like, source isn't like.
That's why I like the word sorcery, because it's like working with the sorcial current, sorcery. Yep.
It's fucking great.
Interesting. I like dealing with source energy as well. I consider myself to be relatively balanced as a magical practitioner, as an esoteric philosopher. I actually have discussed on this channel before, one of the best practices you can do magically for yourself that requires no materials, nothing whatsoever, except about 30 seconds of your time. One thing you can do for yourself is to just project in front of yourself with your imagination, like the best version of yourself, so that you can absolutely be tomorrow. Just right in front of yourself. And then right behind that, just like a white glow of light, that represents your absolute potential, and realize that the step closer to one is a step closer to the other. And you just have to keep up this, focus, essentially.
You have to keep doing the work. It's like,
Mhm.
every day, or it's like, at least, like, you have to at least try to do it every way. I found a simple way to make sure you do your magic every day is find something silly almost to do. Like, I found in I don't remember, I think it was Peter Carroll's, one of his magic books, but he said, do something random every day. So my personal one is, I just chose to do like push-ups when I wake up and when I go to bed. Not
It's a
not
good
a
one.
crazy amount or anything like that, but and I started with 11, because I was like, 10 for me, 1 for Crowley, because I was reading Crowley stuff at the time. It was like, as like kind of a joke, just like put that like 10 for me, 1 for the universe, and like all the goofy shit. But that's an easy way to do something regular. And it like finding some, like, that's when I find was like, people want to get into it. It's like, well, what do I want to do? What do I read? What do I get into? And that was kind of me when I got into it. But I was like, find something very simple that's you don't already do and repeatable. And then do that every day. There you go. You're practicing magic. It's as simple as that. And if you do something physical like I chose, there's great benefits. Like I got a lot stronger over the last, 7 months since I took the push-up,
Yeah,
ritual into seriousness. But it's especially if you can find something that will benefit you. If if it's every day drawing, I take 10 minutes to draw or 5 minutes to draw or 10
mhm,
minutes to journal, just getting into a regularity of practicing something of personal expression or personal sacrifice. Like in my rationalization, choosing the push-ups, because I wasn't sure about materials, I considered myself the effigy, the calories I burn when I exude the energy,
absolutely,
exhaustion.
absolutely.
That
Mhm.
is the sacrifice to the universe and to pay me back. And from practicing that within a month, I got 2 new members to my band and I got a studio. It was like within a month or two of just doing that, like not really focused on anything, but just doing something random and like self-sacrificing at a slight degree. It doesn't have to be, like I said, we've talked about materials. It doesn't have to be this extreme thing, but something silly or stupid. Body weight squats if you want to, if you or just like a 10-minute walk every day where you clear your mind of everything and walk around your neighborhood and try to think of absolutely nothing. That's a ritual practice. Like that is something that can get you the wheels turning. And found in myself is just by doing that, then the universe seemed to willingly start to uncover paths to follow to continue my investigations and my interests into like everything esoteric that we've discussed so far. It's by taking the small steps, it seems that life seems to start to reflect your will to want to learn about it. Like your openness to new information, it seems to reflect in that. So it's like by taking on something that seems silly now, but you do it every day and you do it every time you say you're going to do it, and maybe you attach it to a certain time or like numerology, like, oh, it's 11 minutes after 7, that's when I do my X. And for what I found is by doing that, the universe seemed to open doorways for me like very quickly. Just after a few months, just in general, like general luck got a little bit better. And that's where journaling is important, so you keep track of what's going on with your practice. Like what I've been doing this, what has changed? Like creating an objective view of what is going on is the only way to acknowledge the effects of your practice. For my personal experience, that's where like the journaling is almost always mentioned, and I think is very important. I gave all my band members, like I did a nice psychedelic drawing on the cover and gave it to them, and I just was like, this is for magic dreams and anything crazy. And but that's a great place to start, for someone who might have come across this conversation as curious, is just like basic journaling and something silly to start a practice. The best way to start is to do it. Like literally, you have
Mhm.
to.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I think practice and praxis in general is a huge part of magic in general. And whenever I'm like trying to help people, instructing people on how to get their energy in the right place and get their focus in the right mind, like one of the things that I tell them is like 50% practice. Like whatever you're doing, like make at least 50% of it. And these are rough numbers, of course, but just
yeah,
so people have a place to start, make 50% what you're doing practice and 25% what you're doing review.
yeah,
That way, like you're constantly also reflecting, but you're not stuck in the past and you're not stuck in the future, like, anxious. You're not depressed or anxious.
yeah,
Like, and you're putting things into motion. And then like take the other 25% to like study the outside and how people are doing things as well and learn how to integrate that.
yeah.
That way you create a cyclical nature. Like I'm all about being self-reliant, but like community driven. You know
Well,
what I mean?
you don't want to fall into like fallacies, like what we were talking about earlier about material things in your
Sure.
practices. It's important to discuss openly with other people that are interested and may practice themselves, no matter what form, because they might, like I said, is like reading all these books. You can't take everything as 100% truth, but there is a
No,
lot of
of course
truth in
not.
there. But people are wealths of knowledge, because how, like, you could adjust your, I mean, everyone can lie, obviously, but like you could adjust in your writings how you documented your magic work and be like, oh, I did this practice and this crazy thing happened. But when you're standing conversation with someone being like, oh yeah, I was working on this didn't really work out, I seem to get a lot of benefit from this, their personal experience can be extremely valuable. And I mean, that goes beyond magic, that goes to everything. It's like, I've found that every single person you know has an experience that you haven't, and their reaction to that you can learn from
I agree.
how they
I agree.
react to that experience. And that goes in like jobs, social experiences, and magical practices. It's very important to be always open. But it's good to be, you shouldn't close off. Like, even
I
if
agree.
someone
Yeah.
sounds absolutely insane, just let them go. And because there might be just like one phrase in there that you think about that helps you, even if 99% was just crap.
Well,
Like,
sometimes it's just a synchronicity that lets you know that you're going the right way. Um, yeah, I I agree. Intuition is a big part of magic, and it sounds sort of like that's kind of what you're getting into a little bit.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on intuition?
Well, I've had see, I've been like I guess I'm not sure the like classification, but it's like I have dreams my whole life that end up happening.
Mhm.
Usually it's like a year and a half beforehand without much context laid in. And like, unfortunately, like the really only way to like prove it is if was it like a long-term relationship and I had a girlfriend and I was like, this is about to happen. And then it did. And she goes, what the fuck was that? And I go, I don't know, but it's not really useful, but it's a thing that happens. And I think that was just like how you said the universe exposes things to you. And it's like, if any of those times I looked into what, like, the reality of seeing things before they may happen in the dreams, then I would have dove into the shamanism and the magic things much earlier. But each time that happened, to me, it was like a flag, and especially in hindsight of, hey, look into this. Hey, look into this. Hey, look into this. And I'm going, oh, that's not real. I live on the clock. I live in the material world with humans, and I got to go to my job, and I have to go to class, and I have to go do this. I didn't think for a second that there might be any weight to that intuition. And I mean, so I've ridden motorcycles my whole life, and, around 18, 19, transitioned to riding street motorcycles. The first day I rode a motorcycle, it broke down in front of my grandfather's tombstone in a town 45 minutes from where I grew up that I'd never been in, besides for that funeral and to visit him occasionally when I was a child.
Interesting.
It literally, like, it stopped running, and I look around and I'm like, this is oddly familiar, railroad track. And I look to my upper left and there's this tombstone. I go, wow, that's fucking bizarre. Literally, the motorcycle was fine. We had to plug a little tube back in and it ran fine. We went riding the rest of the day. But ever since that moment, I would get these, like, I think you said you were talked about guardian angels, or like, I believe in the questionnaire that you sent me earlier, um, or guardian spirits, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it was his energy, but from that day on, I would get these intuitions on my motorcycle, and I'd be like doing 150 miles an hour, and I'd be like, "Hey, slow down! There's a cop. Slow down!" And then I'd be doing the speed limit, and there'd be a cop there. Or it'd be like, "Hey, slow down! Something doesn't feel right." So I'd slow down, and then a car would pull out in front of me unprompted, like they didn't see me. These types of things would happen every day on my motorcycle, and that's one of the only conclusions I have to why I got so lucky doing what I was doing at such a, you know, insane rate. It's stupid looking back, like the level of risk, but you have to understand is like, I don't care. Like you said, challenges to adversity is like, that was my adversity. Like the risk. I always loved cranking the risk up. And it finally like peaked out with motorcycles at crazy rates, and then into some like substance abuse with alcohol, like just tons of alcohol. But it's like that pushing that limit of risk, putting yourself in risky situations to get that high off of it. Because when that adrenaline dumps, that's when I would feel that, the intuition would kick in, those things. So I was always fiending for that intuition. It became like, when I see adrenaline junkies, I see people fiending to connect to that intuition. When you feel like your body's running at 1,000%, not just you are aware of every like cell in your body hitting that brake or cranking that throttle, but like you're aware of like your entire energy force at that level. Like your heart rate's at 150, and you're traveling at speeds that are never meant for the human race at all. And you, for whatever reason, I got addicted to that. And then luckily I found it later on in life with through like meditation through drumming and then meditation more classically. But I think that's where it came from. It's like I've always had these intuition feelings, and the only way I could express it and get my play out of it was by doing crazier and crazier things. So it's like I had intuition as a child, seeing, things in my dreams, very animated dreams, very lucid dreams. Like I was always aware, always moving, always making decisions. But there's weight to them. There's something to that, and that, like I said, like it's honestly easier to just call it magic, like that intuitive sense that can come from dreams and seeing things that may happen. I still haven't found a way to make it useful in any practical sense. It's just like, okay, I got this dream, then a year and a half later, because in certain instances, I wouldn't even know the people involved in the dream yet. Like I would end up meeting them 6 months later, and then the instance that I had recalled from a dream would happen another year after that. And it would always be in high stress kind of like calamities. Like one was a motorcycle accident. I had a dream of texting this dude Steve on Facebook Messenger before I ever even joined the writing group where I met Steve. And then when I finally got the messages from that actual night where he wrecked and got messed up and had to go to the hospital, I had this flashback of like, I've had this fucking conversation before. Like I've seen this. I've typed these messages word for word. I've done this before. But I still, even in my most recent practice, have no understanding of how to practically like capture whatever that is. It just seems to be like random. And I've heard, I was talking to another drummer last night at the studio. He was explaining his brother got in a bad motorcycle accident. An hour before they got the call that he had crashed and was in the hospital, fucked up, cracked skull. Like he's very, like he's okay now, but still very banged up. His mother broke down sobbing in tears an hour before, unprompted. She was just in her house and started bawling in tears, crying, mad. And then she just wrote it off because she, like, I don't know what that is. 2 hours later, she gets the phone call when they're at family dinner that he's in the hospital, critical condition in the ICU. What is that? Like he told me I could share that story today in the interview, but it's like, why did she break down crying 2 hours before her son got deathly injured and almost died? And he also explained to me that the last time he saw him that day, he actually had this thought from the universe that, hey, maybe I should invite him to come with me to go to dinner, the family event. But then he just wrote it off. He said, forget about it. That was 2 hours before, he crashed his bike and was almost killed. So I think there's something going on with intuition. Those are my personal experience with it, and some other people recently that have told me about it. I don't know about your own, or if you've found a way to maybe like gather or capture that energy or make it useful. I don't know. It's honestly just been more of like a frustrating thing for me. It's been like, can't this help? Like, give me a lotto number, like anything, something more useful.
It's funny. It's funny. You bring up a few points. So one of them is about intuition. The way that I think about intuition is that it's related to instinct. Intuition is related to what I call the daemon, like in a Socratic sense, the daemon, the higher Socratic self. It's also called the holy guardian angel. I don't really care for that term because it's misleading. Some people go their whole life looking for it when it's literally like with them the whole time.
Mine's so subtle, and like recently, 3 years, it was practice. And this was before meditation. It was just like this inkling, just practice. And now it just says be patient. But like that there's always like this subtle intuition that's like seems to be guiding me, and I can ignore it. And if I seem to ignore it, that's when things get very like if I choose not to be patient and rush anything right now, I know that whatever I do that to will be completely destroyed. Like I know that for a fact because I've gone through my life, maybe 50-50 going with it. Now I go 100% with it because it seems to have a better, and I don't know, I've also thought about maybe it's your subconscious kind of giving you like a more subtle gathering of all interactions that are going on.
So
Like you're
that's what, yeah, that's exactly what we strive to figure out in this practice. It was specifically in like the like Clifothic, Sephirotic practice or ceremonial magic in general is to try to divide consciousness into fragments and degrees to learn how to push those buttons specifically. And so like intuition would relate to like the daemon in my experience,
Mhm.
and then like instinct would relate to the shadow. And that's what I was alluding to earlier about Jung and Dante. Dante said to experience paradise, you have to start in the inferno, something along those lines. And Jung said that a tree's branches can't grow to heaven unless its roots grow to hell. Like the darker arts of magic are all oftentimes metaphors for things that have to happen in the underworld of the unconscious mind. And the crossroads oftentimes are very scary for people because the crossroads oftentimes are the edges of their comfort zone. And the underworld, so to speak, is where those repressed and suppressed emotions and imageries and energies go. And so by doing very shamanic practices like path working
Yep.
into places like heaven or hell, that have specific names and energies and names and guardians and keepers, like you can access, as you were saying, the different degrees of the self. And one way to think about some of the spirits, like the goetic and the shem hamfarash like spirits,
Mhm.
is like 72 degrees of your consciousness.
Yep.
Because every single time someone says, well, like I did this thing and I don't know how it happens, it's like, well, give that thing a name. Well, give that other thing a name. Give that other thing a name. Well, for me, there's already these names and I have attributed them to those things. So anytime I need access to those things to some degree through trance,
Mhm.
essentially, or hypnosis, I can access those states of conscious to different degrees. And to me, it's important to do it in degrees like that because oftentimes you can either get sucked up into heaven without a ladder, you
Yep.
just get sucked up into the bliss of it, or you can fall down the slide into the pit and the abyss without the ladder to get down there. So by drawing degrees or steps or channels with names and guardians, it's a very gradual and demarcated spiritual experience that helps one to come into integration with the different parts of their soul and
Yeah.
figure out where they overlap and how to put them in both sides in use of the higher self,
What
essentially.
what I joke about myself, and I guess in like my earlier intuitions in that, is that like I talk about like falling through the bottom, because like I've always been a nihilist, materialist, misanthrope.
Uh-huh.
Like I hate myself for being human, not just humanity in its whole. It's like I'm very aware of like what is human about me and how that affects my interaction with the world. And I don't necessarily enjoy it. But what I realized is like that how everything is kind of like the horseshoe, or is a horseshoe. Is like when you're at the farthest end, you're essentially looking back at the opposite end. And what I found is like if you equally hate everything, then you also equally love everything just the same, because it becomes a mirror of itself. It's because if everything, the hate bar is all the way to 100, then you also love everything the same. So I call it falling through the bottom or living in the valley. Is like I seem to have reached my like by going, I went down instead of going up then down, which
Mhm.
where most people with their spiritual practice tend to go up towards enlightenment from like a baseline. Is I seem to get life punched me all the way to the bottom, to a point where it's like there's not even like a concept of what fear is. Like there's no fear of death. It just is. Like there's no like there's fear of being suffering, but I know that suffering is only temporary, and especially in this life, like from the Buddhist and the Hindu scriptures, it's like that samsara, that rebirth, that reprocessing of that energy. It seems to be very evident in my life. So there's just, even when I was young, like near death experiences kind of woke me to realizing that it's not a big deal. Like in a weird way, it's like Or I've been knocked unconscious quite a few times through just like being a wild individual, not fighting, but like motorcycle crashes, dirt bike crashes, snowmobiles. When
So
you
let's, yeah, I
when
want to talk about, near death experience and how it relates to like different adrenaline sports, because I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about that zone and that focus that you get in when you're going really fast.
nothing
The
exists,
there It's like you become whatever vehicle, like your consciousness just
merges into it.
yeah, it merges or like impregnates the vehicle like, and it just becomes one with it. And like what it does is it knocks the ego and it knocks the intellect
Yeah,
out, because the intellect cannot think. If you were to ask the intellect, okay, calculate the formula to catch a football
yeah.
from 10 feet away,
No,
98% of us could not do that.
but
But
you
if you
throw a
throw
football
it, we'll catch it
unprompted.
every single time.
You don't even have to
And
worry about
that's what you unlock whenever you're driving really fast, or when you're skateboarding, or when you're skydiving, or whatever you're doing. That flow, that focus can be achieved through ceremony. That
it.
is a certain button on the consciousness register that I have felt so many times during ceremony. It's like an adrenaline button.
It's to me, it's the only time I truly feel connected to the world, like in a weird way. Like that's the only time I truly feel present.
It's grounding.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes you feel present.
because you don't have the time to think about anything else. Like your brain is so hyper focused on the activity, or like you said, the ceremony and the experience. It's more about the experience of that focus,
Absolutely.
laser beam of
Absolutely.
energy. And like I used it and would get, gather some intuition because of like both the stakes I was riding at, but also just like with my motorcycles, they all were rituals. Like I would break down my motorcycles to basically as far as I could take it apart and then put it back together, just because I knew it was mine then. Then it became part of
Yeah.
me.
That's temple hygiene
Yeah.
for magicians. Yeah, that's temple hygiene.
Well,
It's beautiful.
I've even done that with my drum kit in the last 3 years. Like I've completely
Mm.
changed the colors of it, changed a lot of the components, changed like the quality of materials. We went in and like recut all the drum heads just so they can be tuned better. Like, but every moment you spend enhancing the thing, whether it's through practice or the physical thing you channel through, or like my motorcycle,
Intention.
the
Hmm.
intention really pays off, because it's no longer I'm playing this drum kit. It's my I'm not riding a motorcycle. This is my motorcycle. And that, in like I said, it's like making things the ritual. Like I was doing it non-cognitively, but even now when I have my motorcycles, when I work on them, I think of it as the ritual. Working on them, turning wrenches, is the meditation that lets me know the machine. It allows me to become one with this hunk of metal and gas and oil and rubber. But somehow me and that thing can trust each other at 100 miles an hour plus, and I know what it's going to do because I'm the one who turned every bolt and turned every screw. That I know it. It's not, hey, is this thing going to run right? Is this thing going to break? It's like, no, I know it's right because I did
Hmm.
it. But it's about making the thing that important, taking it that serious, is when, like I said, the universe starts to pay off with maybe that intuition from riding, and that, like, the stakes, let alone also the focus and the intent of how much I love doing the thing. And I would
There's
even,
there's a really magical point as well, where you become the one who it's most beneficial to make that decision. Like if you start playing the guitar, like you have no idea what strings to put on the guitar. You have no idea what guitar to buy. You have no idea what
yeah,
tuning.
mhm,
But there's a magical point in that journey when you say, no, I know what strings I want. I
yep,
know what tuning I want, and I know what speed I want to play. That's where you start to become an adept to some degree,
that's where
when you
it
make
becomes,
that thing your own, an expression of yourself.
it's turning a hobby into like
A craft.
a craft. Yeah, but it turning a hobby into magic. Like I said, is like
Mhm.
that investment of time, will, training your body to do the thing. It's like those crazy dudes
Yeah,
that rock climb with
yeah, absolutely.
ropes. You want to
Hmm.
know why? Because they're so laser focused. That's why they make all those
Absolutely.
goals. That's why they're
Absolutely.
like the universe doesn't let them fall, is because they've done
Well,
the work. But they don't
you
always fall.
mentioned you mentioned how important it is to do it every day. I always I agree with that. I would say I'm pretty intense when it comes to life. I say make every action like an act of sacrifice toward your higher self. Like whether you are working with your lower infernal self, like to you, that's your higher self. Like let's just call it that for now, just to save semantics. Like
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, make it an act of devotion or sacrifice to your higher purpose, whatever your most powerful will is. And that will also ignite a very powerful candle, like into, the light of your journey.
And I
That's yeah.
found like taking how you view your higher self and taking it almost through like a prism into like
Mhm.
layers of
Exactly. Yeah,
attachment to it. So it's like
exactly.
when I look at drumming, there is the physical aspect to it, there's the mental aspect, and then there's like the spiritual aspect. There's three aspects. So it's like that means when I do push-ups, that helps drums. When I go work out, it helps drums. And when I rock climb, it helps drums. When I go play soccer, it helps drums. Look, or if I'm just working my job, whether I was a bartender making drinks or I'm doing landscaping, by perfecting everything you do, you become adept at perfecting things you do. So it doesn't matter what you're doing with your body, by becoming extremely adept at whatever's in front of you, you are empowering that higher self, even if it seems completely disconnected from the actual
It's
goal.
all related. Yeah.
It's everything is related. That's what I've learned about like music, drawing, like I do stand-up comedy as well. Somehow doing stand-up comedy to a group of 20 other stand-up comics at a shitty coffee shop makes me a better drummer. Because what I learned is that what comedy training does, it makes my mind think further ahead. So I'm thinking of punchlines, like I'm thinking of my jokes like chess, like how am I lining this up, how am I setting up, and checkmate, joke, boom. But now when I'm on my drums, I'm thinking, how can I line up this phrasing to get to the next bar, to extend this phrasing, this fill out further, to maybe like cycle it again, maybe drop it into 3 times. By doing the comedy, it's allowed my brain to think better in a drum aspect too. And that's when I started learning like everything comes from everything. By practicing art and doing the meditative auto drawing, with and doing a lot of sacred geometry, it's the mental state, because I'm already adept at moving my hands around with drumsticks, but my mind wasn't adept at thinking. So it's like every time you touch that creative source energy, it seems to pay off in every other aspect. And any way you can find in your own actions, like if you just are, oh, did I lose you? No, you're still there. But
I'm
if,
making notes. Sorry. I'm
yeah,
taking notes.
but like even if you're a fucking sandwich maker, you should be the best fucking sandwich maker you can, because what you're doing is you're learning to work efficiently with your body. And that pays off tenfold through every aspect of your life, whether it's employment, magic, music, or just being a human being. If you look at what you're doing and actually try to become the most efficient version of yourself doing it, that starts to transpose into every aspect of life. It's seeking that personal perfection, and not to kill yourself when you mess up, but to understand that like maybe you are like a loser now. It's okay to be, if that's what you consider. Like look at what you define as like a loser or someone that's not getting things together. And if you see correlations between yourself and that, then start to look at those things. Like I was saying, just be a better, at everything. Be a better human being. Be better with your family. Be better with your friends. Be softer. Be more efficient with how you spend your time with people. Talk about things that may actually matter to you with those people. Like make everything important. Make everything a practice. Everything a practice. Like you were saying, seek that higher self in everything that you do, because it always will pay back, because you're becoming better. It's like laying down layers. Like I've heard the saying on a bunch of people say it, but you lay down layers of paint one at a time every day. And over 1,000 days you'll have a mound, and over 1,000 years you'd have a mountain. But you're never going to notice each layer every day. You're only going to notice it a month in. But like you said, that focus of will every day to reaching that higher potential is what's really necessary in just being a better human being, not magical or anything. It's just, you should always seek to improve yourself. I think comfortability is a curse, and it's like and almost a disease of the human race at this point. Like we're a species that's meant to survive and be pressured to keep pushing forward. And the more we get comfortable, the more things will just continue to decay into wherever we're headed. doesn't seem bright, but
Evolution needs adversity. I agree.
it
You've
needs.
mentioned you've mentioned near-death experience a couple times. There are several interviews that I have conducted. Over a dozen of them have mentioned near-death experiences. It's interesting to me how common death becomes a topic in relation to magic and art and inspiration. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about that? Did you
Like,
feel more close to the other side as you came back each time?
like death has just been like almost like a friend of mine. It was like it's almost like death has never felt cold or scary. It felt like warm, like welcoming, like almost like I've had faced some like adversity through life, social, physical, physical injuries or social issues, but it's the death always seemed like it's gonna be like, ah, we did that. Like how you ride a roller coaster and it's intense, you go through the waves, and then you get in and you get off the roller coaster. That's what death feels like to me. It feels like it'll be the end, not like, and it's not that I want to cut this experience short. It's just that I know this is an experience that I'm experiencing. Like something has like I've always been called an old soul since I was like 6 years old. And if I looked up my Mayan chart, and I was an owl and a dog and an old soul that's probably like reprocessed. And then in Indian, again, it's like I have a lot of samsara experience, past life experience, past life. I meet people that I'm so familiar with that I've never met before, but it's like I have emotions that have no memories to them. It's one of the most bizarre experiences I've had. And like all of my relationships with women has been that instant, like not love at first sight. It's I know this person. And that's what I wrapped in like the old souls, or like the repurposing of energy by the universe. There seems to be like a tag along for some people, some more than others. But like I think the near death experience is just like it how close you get to it kind of reflects the fragility of life. So it takes away, like, it to me, fragile takes away value to it. Like, because it's so fragile, like it's so easy to die. I could die of a brain aneurysm right now, like unprompted for no really apparent reason. So to put so much fear into that seemed silly. It just seems silly because it's like, I'm not going to have control of when I die. I just will. So what is there to be afraid of? The concept of being afraid of death has always baffled me personally. And I also, what's led me to the shamanism is like a lot of my dreams were like very intense, like the getting ripped apart by animals, getting ripped apart by like beast monster types thing. That's why I led into shamanism. That's what it highlighted for me, was those childhood experiences of like lucid nightmares, experiencing death over and over and over again, very similar dreams repeated. So it loosened. I don't know if there was ever any weight of the fear of death, but it made it seem very realistic and very probable. So the necessity to put weight and this fear on it just seemed like a waste of mental energy, I guess. And that's the way I can sum it up. Also, like getting knocked unconscious through sports, things like that also make you realize how, like, that's probably what that's gonna feel like. It's just gonna be like one hard smack and then nothing. And either you open those eyes again and see the world again, or you don't. And but to me, it's like it seems so silly to even discuss with like a normal person, because they're like, oh yeah, like dad, like I'm getting older. I'm like I've seen people cry when they turn 40, and I'm like gonna hit 40 at like a finish line. Like, holy shit, we made it! Like that's incredible. Like the amount of like opportunities for me to die or just be taken out by chance is so vastly high.
Yeah. I already made it further than I thought I would. So everything else is just like, it's like I'm at a theme park at this point.
I thought I was gonna make it to 19, and I'm turning 28 this year, so it's a very interesting ride. But like I said, it's like it's a ride. Like I think it's the old Carlin bit. It's like, buddy, it's a ride. Don't take it so fucking serious. It does feel like that to me in a sense. Yeah.
Awesome. So what are your plans for the future? Like what are some plans for the immediate future?
The immediate future, over the next few months, we're going to be recording and releasing a full-length album, and hopefully encapsulating that magic energy in that, and then starting to play live through the winter. In the meantime, it's just like I said, it's like every day is practice to reach that higher self. I try to find any ways to expand my creativity and expand my openness. I plan on keep studying as much as I can as well. I find, great value in digging through almost any chaos magic or shamanism book. I feel like there's not a lot of reading going on through like people in our society, and maybe in our specific subgroup there is a lot of reading going on, but I feel like just look up a shamanism book, pick it up once in a while, or get an audiobook and just start someplace. That's where I started. I didn't know anything, and I kind of thought I was crazy for even entertaining it at first. And I feel like there's definitely, I don't know if you had that phase where you're like, am I nuts or is this real? And that was like a weird one to digest.
Only my whole life.
Yeah. So, but like, that's also how I honestly kind of felt about life, is like, is life real or am I nuts? And it's breaking through that and just, always keeping a foot in reality, but allowing yourself to expand into these magical realms. It's super beneficial for me. And I think I'm going to continue on doing that, as just keep improving, keep trying to channel that, keep like working on that muscle. And, we'll see if the universe pays off. That's
excellent. Excellent. I got. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you are hopeful for the future. I appreciate you coming on. You mentioned your band. We were talking a little bit earlier. You said the name of your band was Herbitual Consumption.
Yep.
HERB, Herbitual Consumption. Do you have any website or anywhere that people can listen to the music?
It's on Spotify. It's available for streaming pretty much anywhere you can get it. Prime, Apple. I do a full release using DistroKid just because it's very effective, and I see the benefits to releasing music specifically on like Bandcamp, but I think my music's for everybody. So if you have a streaming service, you can look it up and it'll come up. Our most recent release was recorded under the influence, which will be hinted at on the album cover. You'll see. But it's just a very fun way to express. It's a nice fusion of progressive rock and classic rock. We're huge Tool fans, huge classic rock guys, blues guys. It creates a great experience. I recommend listening through the most recent demo front to back, because that encapsulates a nice basically like miniature psychedelic experience in 30 to 40 minutes. So yeah, that's all I got. My YouTube is Mr. Jim. If you want to call me or claim that I didn't ride motorcycles like a psycho, you can look me up on YouTube, and they're there. Be doing a bunch of wild shit. It's all old footage from 5, 6, 7 years ago that I've pulled from an old hard drive and finally getting around to showing the world. But it's interesting because also I should say, from my personal experiences, don't expect people to believe your own life if you choose to experience it fully.
Yeah, you have to have an inner drive if you're going to make it out alive.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I don't know if there's any more questions you have for me, or that will wrap things up for us today.
I think that'll do it. Maybe we'll have you on again in the future sometime if you're interested in something like that.
I'm more than welcome. After the next album release, maybe we could talk about that music and get a little music magic theory chat going. More
awesome.
focused. Sorry if I rambled and talked a little bit in circles, but
that's all right.
Having a lot of interviews. Hopefully we'll do more in the future. Good luck to you, my friend.
Thank you so much. Hope you have a good rest of the week. Take care.
Brother.